Have you ever been told, without a word, that you don't belong? Imagine stepping onto a plane, ticket in hand, seat clearly printed, and finding someone else already there. Not just someone, but a person who looks at you and assumes they matter more. What would you do? Move quietly to avoid conflict, or stand firm, knowing the world is watching? On SkyNova Flight 227, a black CEO named Selena Warren faced that choice. Her seat 3A was taken, her presence dismissed, her dignity tested. In that moment, silence would have been easier, but it would also have been surrender. What happened next wasn't just about one seat, one flight, or one woman. It became a battle between entitlement and respect, arrogance and quiet strength. And the question lingers, if it had been you standing there, would you have stayed silent or refused to be moved? This is more than a story about travel. It's about dignity, courage, and the cost of choosing truth when the world expects compliance. If this story moves you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, because sometimes one stand can change everything. JFK International Airport breathed with its usual morning rush. Rolling suitcases clattered over polished tiles. Voices rose and blended under the glass ceiling that reflected the pale September light. Travelers hurried through security lines, coffee cups in hand, glancing at departure boards flashing with delays and gate changes. In the middle of that motion walked Selena Warren. She was not in a rush. Her pace was steady, deliberate. A navy blazer hung over her shoulders, pressed without a wrinkle, matched with soft leather shoes that clicked in rhythm with the tiled floor. She carried no flashy jewelry, no entourage, no desperate need for attention. What she carried was a quiet authority that turned heads even when people did not know why. Her boarding pass sat folded inside a slim leather wallet, tucked neatly into her hand. It read, First Class, Seat 3A, SkyNova Airways Flight 729 to Los Angeles. To most people, she might look like another executive traveler crossing the country for a meeting. But behind her calm presence was a truth unknown to nearly everyone in that terminal. Selena Warren was not just any traveler. She was the chairwoman and majority shareholder of SkyNova Airways, a woman whose decisions shaped thousands of jobs, moved millions of dollars, and decided the future of an entire airline. She kept that truth close to her chest. Power, she had learned, was not something you wore loudly. Power was something you carried quietly, like a weight balanced on your shoulders, visible only to those who knew how to look. As she walked toward Gate 57, she felt the familiar hum of anticipation. She had flown countless times, visited dozens of cities, and spoken in boardrooms where every word she said was analyzed, challenged, tested. But today was supposed to be simple: board the flight, take her seat, review the quarterly merger documents, and arrive in Los Angeles before noon. Nothing extraordinary. At least that's what she thought. The jet bridge rattled beneath her steps as she joined the line of first-class passengers. Some were business people in tailored suits tapping nervously on their phones. Others were vacationers in designer sweatshirts, laughing too loud for the quiet morning. Selena noticed details the way someone does when they are used to observing, not performing. She noticed the young mother rocking a toddler, the older man folding his newspaper just so, the college student pulling his cap lower while scrolling his feed. When she entered the cabin, the air changed. First class gleamed with polished chrome, leather seats that smelled faintly of new car interior, and the soft whisper of champagne being poured too early in the morning. Flight attendants offered polite smiles as passengers settled in, adjusting bags in overhead compartments. Selena paused in the narrow aisle, eyes finding row 3. Her seat, 3A was by the window, a spot she had always preferred. The view outside reminded her of the first time she ever boarded a plane, a teenager traveling with a borrowed suitcase and a heart full of wonder. Back then, she never dreamed she would one day own part of the airline itself. But when she reached row 3, her steps slowed. Her seat was already occupied. A blonde woman sat comfortably in 3A, legs crossed. Tote bags sprawled across the armrest like a flag claiming territory. The woman scrolled casually through her phone, not even glancing up as Selena stood by the row. Selena cleared her throat gently. "Excuse me, I believe this is my seat." The blonde woman did not move. Without lifting her eyes from the glowing screen, she replied, "You must be mistaken. This is my seat." The word "my" cut through the cabin like the snap of a whip. A few passengers nearby shifted slightly in their seats, sensing the tension but saying nothing. One man lowered his newspaper just enough to watch. Another adjusted the strap of his watch, pretending not to listen while his eyes stayed fixed. Selena's lips pressed together. She pulled her wallet from her blazer, slid the boarding pass free, and held it steady. "Seat 3A. It's printed clearly right here." Still the blonde woman barely looked. A faint smile curved her lips, the kind of smile polished in charity galas and corporate receptions. "Sweetheart," she said, the word dripping with condescension. "I've been flying Skynova for 12 years. Window seats are always mine. Why don't you take 3C instead?" Selena inhaled slowly, the kind of breath that steadied her when negotiations turned sharp. Her chest tightened, but her chin lifted. She had been in rooms where people underestimated her, dismissed her, treated her presence as an accident. It was nothing new. And yet, standing there in front of strangers, the weight of the moment pressed harder than usual. The cabin seemed to grow quieter. The shuffle of boarding faded. A college student 2 rows back angled his phone just slightly, camera capturing what his caption would soon broadcast first-class drama at JFK. Selena felt the eyes on her, waiting to see what she would do. Would she smile politely, take 3C, let the blonde woman keep the seat as if it truly belonged to her, or would she stand firm, even if it meant making the entire cabin uncomfortable? Her voice came calm, steady. Respect matters more than loyalty points. The blonde woman finally looked up, eyes sharp, mouth curling into a half smile that was anything but warm. Around them, silence deepened. Passengers leaned forward, breaths held, phones tilted higher. Selena stood rooted in the aisle, not yet revealing who she really was. She didn't need to. For now, it was enough to claim her seat with nothing more than presence, posture, and truth. Somewhere deep inside, though, she felt the first stirrings of something larger. This wasn't just about 3A. Not anymore. Selena kept her voice even. "Ma'am, this is seat 3A. My boarding pass is right here." The blonde woman finally tilted her face towards Selena as if drawn by an annoyance she could no longer ignore. Her gaze traveled from Selena's shoes to her eyes, a slow appraisal ending in a faint, practiced smile. "I'm sure you're mistaken," she said. "I always take the window. It's better light, better view. I like to arrive in Los Angeles refreshed." "Then you'll be comfortable in 3C, Selena replied, still calm, "because 3A is mine." The woman's name tag glittered from the leather tote, a metal monogram that read V.H. The initials meant nothing yet. The tone did. Around them, the cabin quieted in that particular way airplanes do before takeoff, as if the room itself inhaled and held the breath. The college student 2 rows back lowered his cap and angled his phone. A suited man in row 1 lifted one corner of his newspaper, pretending to read, eyes locked on the scene. The woman flicked her wrist. "Sweetheart, you don't need to make this unpleasant. I'm Victoria Hale." She waited for recognition. "I'm a Platinum Infinity member. 12 years with Skynova. People know me here." Selina nodded once. "Good morning, Ms. Hale. My name is Selina." She didn't say more. She didn't need to. "Then you know how this works," Victoria continued, still smiling. "Loyalty counts. They always give me the window. It's practically a courtesy at this point." Selina felt a small heat behind her ribs, the kind that meant a line had been crossed without anyone saying it out loud. She had met this tone before. Boardrooms, restaurants, hotel desks at midnight. The words changed, but the message traveled the same path. You should move. You should shrink. You should go around while I go through. I will sit where my boarding pass says, Selina said. 3A. A beat passed. Victoria's smile sharpened. There's no need to make a scene. People like me always sit here. The phrase hung between them like a dropped plate. People like me. It was soft in volume and loud in meaning. A ripple moved through the cabin. Someone cleared his throat. Someone else set down a champagne flute. Selina did not flinch. She stepped slightly closer so the aisle didn't become a stage for raised voices. "Respect matters more than status," she said. "Please check your pass." Victoria fished in the tote and produced a boarding pass with red lacquered nails. She glanced, then tucked it back without letting Selina see. "It's correct," she said. "It always is. Let's verify." Selina replied. A shadow entered the row. The lead flight attendant had arrived. He looked mid-30s, tidy hair, pressed uniform. His name tag read Ethan. He carried the smile of someone trained to resolve problems before they grew teeth. "Good morning," Ethan said. "Let's get everyone comfortable. Ms. Hale, Ms. Warren." He used their names like balm. "We can sort this in a moment. Ms. Warren, may I see your boarding pass?" Selina handed it over. He scanned. He nodded. 3A, window seat. Ethan turned to Victoria. "And yours, Ms." Hale Victoria's smile strained a fraction. "I told her. This is my seat." "I understand," Ethan said. "May I see the pass so I can double-check?" Victoria paused long enough for the moment to feel intentional. Then she pulled the slip free and handed it over, palm down as if it were a card in a private game. Ethan scanned, glanced at the seat map on his tablet, and blinked. "It looks like you're in 3C. Ms. Hale," he said gently. "Aisle seat." Victoria's hand froze in midair. Her eyes hardened. "That must be a system error. They always put me by the window." Ethan's smile didn't waver. "I can ask the gate to confirm, but the manifest shows 3C assigned to you, and 3A to Ms. Warren." A small wave of whispers moved through the cabin. Someone whispered, "Knew it." Too loud. The college student's phone tilted higher. The caption changed. "First-class drama at JFK? For real." Victoria gave a breathy laugh. "Look, Ethan, you've seen me on this route for years. You know how I travel. Just let her take 3C and we'll all be happy." Ethan hesitated. Selina clocked it. That small, betraying pause taught to service professionals who are told to keep things pleasant. Pleasant, even when pleasant means pushing the burden onto the quieter person. Selina met Ethan's eyes, not unkind, not pleading. Why should the rightful passenger move, she asked. What are we teaching every person in this cabin if we reward refusal? Ethan inhaled. readying a corporate answer. Before he could speak, a clear voice rose from row 4. "This looks like discrimination on camera," the woman said. She stood halfway, dark hair pinned neatly, a lanyard with a press badge glinting. Isabella Ramirez, journalist. Phone swiveled. The college student stream doubled in viewers in seconds. Ethan straightened. "Ma'am, please remain seated during boarding." "I will," Isabella said, sitting back down. "After everyone heard what Miss Hale said about people like me, like her." She tipped her head toward Selena. "Maybe we all need to hear the airlines say the boarding passes matter more than privilege." Victoria let out a small, incredulous sound. "Are we really going to do this over a seat? She can sit right there. 3C, window, aisle. What difference does it make?" "It makes the difference," Selena said softly, "between courtesy and capitulation." The words didn't rise. They didn't need to. They carried a gravity that pulled attention toward them. And yet, under the measured tone, another voice hummed inside Selena's chest, a voice both older and younger than she was. "You can let it pass. You can spare yourself the glare, the headlines, the muttered comments. Take the aisle. Finish your work. Be efficient. Be small." She took a breath and let that voice pass through without landing. "Ethan," she said, "I would like to sit in the seat I paid for." Ethan nodded. "Ms. Hale, the manifest is clear. Please take 3C so we can continue boarding." Victoria's jaw set. She did not move. "Ms. Hale," Ethan repeated, still even. "Please." The aisle clogged behind him. Passengers pressed close with the slow impatience of people trapped by someone else's decision. A toddler fussed. The sound of the jet bridge vibrated in a low, rattling hum. Up front, a chime tinked from the galley. The plane's systems breathed around them, an organism with its own heartbeat. Victoria leaned back and crossed her arms. "I'm not moving. Call your supervisor. Call the captain. Call whoever you need to call. People know me here." A murmur rolled forward from row 1, where an older man with a clipped mustache watched with tight lips. "This is unbelievable," he said under his breath, which meant it was just loud enough to hear. Ethan's smile lost a shade of brightness. "I'll get the captain," he said. "Please hold." He stepped away, tablet at his side. Selena slid her boarding pass back into the wallet and waited. She did not fill the air with extra words. She did not explain herself to a stranger who had decided to make her smaller before knowing anything at all. She watched the window instead, the gray wing reaching out toward nothing. She remembered the first time she flew alone. A paper bag lunch. $2 folded inside for a soda. A stranger who had shifted his bag without being asked so she could sit by the window and see the clouds. The aisle shifted again. A silver-haired pilot stepped in, shoulders square inside his jacket, eyes moving quickly over faces and posture and heat. The cabin seemed to stand straighter when he arrived, the way people do around a uniform. "Good morning," he said. "I'm Captain Mitchell. We need to clear the aisle and take our seats. Ms. Warren, Ms. Hale." He nodded to both women. "I understand there's a seating dispute." "There isn't," Victoria said first. "This has been my seat for years." Captain Mitchell held out a hand. "Boarding passes, please." Selena handed hers over without comment. He glanced, nodded, returned it. 3A. He turned to Victoria. She hesitated. Then she gave the pass. He looked at it. A faint furrow appeared between his brows. 3C, he read. "It's a mistake," Victoria said. "It happens all the time." Captain Mitchell looked at Ethan's tablet. He looked at the seat map above row 3. He looked at the line of waiting passengers, then back at the two women. Something like reluctance softened his shoulders. In situations like this, he said, carefully, we sometimes ask a passenger to move to keep the peace. Selina felt the words like cold water. To keep the peace. She thought of how many times peace had meant silence for someone like her. Peace had meant swallowing an insult whole. Peace had meant walking away from the window seat, from the table, from the opportunity, so someone else could sit comfortably with their story about how the world should work. At what point, she asked quietly, does keeping the peace become rewarding refusal? The question did not rise. It settled. It pressed into the space between their shoes and the carpet with its tiny repeating airplanes. Ethan looked at the captain. The captain looked at Victoria. Victoria rolled her eyes and let her mouth shape a smile that wasn't one. You people, Victoria said, almost under her breath, yet not enough to be missed. Always play the victim card. A hiss moved through the cabin. Isabella's phone lifted higher. The college student's comments exploded up the screen. The man in row 1 lowered his paper completely. Selina did not react. She refused to give that phrase more oxygen than it already stole. Instead, she reached for the armrest, set down her leather wallet, and looked at Captain Mitchell. My boarding pass says 3A, she said. I will sit in 3A. She did not raise her voice. She did not ask permission. She stepped toward the window, and the moment she did, the entire cabin leaned forward as if to hear the hinge of history turning. Selina slid into the window seat, placing her leather wallet on the narrow tray as if to anchor the claim. For a moment, the cabin breathed in silence. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was charged, the way a room feels just before thunder. Victoria Hale turned in her seat, angling her body so her voice carried. Her smile sharpened, the kind designed to win negotiations and cut down opposition in one motion. You know, she said, voice pitched for an audience, Sweetheart is being generous. People like me always sit here. People like you should be grateful to have a seat at all. The words did not need to be louder. They landed like a blade. Around them, a man coughed into his newspaper, the sound too sudden to be casual. A mother shifted her daughter closer, covering the child's ears, though she never said why. Phones tilted higher. Selina's heart pressed against her ribs, heavy but steady. She had heard words like these before, in boardrooms where someone assumed her seat at the table was charity, in interviews where someone asked if she was lucky to be chosen, never understanding that she had built her fortune brick by brick, in private dinners where introductions paused just a breath too long before acknowledging her title. She knew this tone. She had lived under its weight for decades. Her first instinct was to swallow it down, the way she had been taught as a girl. Keep your head high. Let the insults slide. Preserve your dignity in silence. But another thought sparked, clearer. Stronger silence lets them believe they are right. Selina lifted her eyes to Victoria's and said, Respect is not optional. It is not earned by points or years. It is given because we are human. The response was soft, but it carried. The air seemed to shift as passengers leaned closer. One whispered, She's right. Another shook his head slowly, muttering, Unbelievable. Victoria laughed, a brittle sound. Look around. These people know me. They've seen me here for years. I belong. You'll be more comfortable elsewhere. Don't you understand? The words weren't simply about a seat anymore. They dripped with something older, deeper, the suggestion that belonging was reserved for some and denied to others. Selina's fingers brushed the boarding pass still lying on the tray. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, the way it had when she was 16, boarding her first solo flight. Never forget. Your place is not given. You take it with calm strength, and you hold it with dignity. Her stomach tightened, but she held Victoria's gaze. The ticket in my hand says this is my seat. Nothing else matters. The tension thickened until it seemed the air itself resisted breathing. Ethan Clark shifted uncomfortably by the aisle, torn between pleasing one passenger and protecting the truth printed on the boarding pass. Captain Mitchell's jaw tightened as if each second dragged him deeper into a decision he didn't want to make. From row 4, Isabella Ramirez raised her phone higher. It's on record, she said firmly. Everyone can see it. Everyone can hear it. This isn't about peace. This is about prejudice. Victoria's mask cracked. Her voice rose, louder, sharper, aimed not at Selena, but at the cabin itself. Do you even know who I am? Do you have any idea? Selena turned slowly, her face calm, her tone unchanged. Not yet, but you're about to find out who I am. A murmur ran through the passengers, a ripple like wind through leaves. The man in row 1 leaned forward, abandoning his newspaper altogether. The college student's live stream doubled in comments. She's standing her ground. This is history. Keep filming. Selena sat back, posture regal, eyes steady, refusing to be moved. She had chosen the harder road, the one her younger self might have avoided to spare herself the looks, the whispers, the fight. But now, at 45, with the weight of a company and a lifetime of lessons behind her, she understood. Some moments were not about comfort. They were about truth. And in that cabin, under the hum of the overhead fans and the glare of phone cameras, truth had just taken its seat in 3A. The aisle remained jammed with restless passengers, their bags weighing heavy against their shoulders. The murmur of voices grew louder, like a tide that could not be pushed back. Ethan Clark, the lead flight attendant, straightened his jacket, his face carefully arranged into professional calm, but the tightness around his eyes betrayed nerves. Ladies, he said, voice smooth but brittle. Let's resolve this quickly. Ms. Warren, perhaps you'd be comfortable in 3C. It's still in the same row. We can all settle down and be on our way. The words were dressed as kindness, but Selena heard the familiar undertone. It was the kind of compromise she had been offered all her life move over. Give in. Make space so others don't have to. The burden disguised as courtesy. She felt the weight of every watching eye. Her mind flickered to moments she thought she had buried. The graduate seminar where her name was skipped on the list until she raised her hand. The hotel check-in where the clerk insisted she must be mistaken about her reservation. The boardroom where a younger man had been handed the credit for her deal. Each time, the easy way out had been to step aside, but every step aside had built a mountain of silence. She lifted her chin. Why should the rightful passenger move? Why should the one who follows the rules be the one who pays for someone else's refusal? Ethan's jaw shifted, but his smile remained. It's just. Sometimes we take the path of least resistance. It prevents disruption. Prevents disruption for whom Selena asked softly. Her voice carried like a thread of steel. From the back of the cabin, a college student adjusted his phone, the live stream title changing in real time. Classic discrimination. She's standing strong. Comments poured in. Hold your ground. Queen. I've seen this before. This is real. Respect her seat. Victoria Hale scoffed, tossing her hair. Honestly, this is absurd. People like me have sat in that seat for years. Why are we wasting time? The words landed again, People like me. Phones lifted higher. Whispers sharpened. Someone muttered, "Unbelievable." Another woman covered her mouth, shaking her head. Selina's stomach tightened, but she kept her posture tall. The truth was simple, printed in black ink on her boarding pass. She had no need to raise her voice. She set the pass gently on the armrest so everyone nearby could see. 3A, she said. It's right there. Ethan hesitated. He glanced toward the cockpit as though hoping for rescue. His training told him to de-escalate, to keep the peace, but his conscience wavered under the weight of truth unfolding in front of him. Before he could answer, Isabella Ramirez leaned forward again from row 4. Her voice was clear, unshaken. This is not about a seat. This is about whether rules apply equally. And everyone here can see that right now, they do not. Her phone streamed the scene live. Comments blazed across the feed. She's right. Civil rights violation. Don't let them gaslight this. Ethan looked at Selina, then at Victoria. For a second, his polished mask slipped, and his discomfort was plain. He wanted the conflict to disappear, to be swept under the rug like so many others. But the cameras made that impossible. The cabin waited, the hum of the air system filling the silence. Selina folded her hands neatly in her lap, every movement deliberate. She would not be moved, not by politeness twisted into pressure, not by smiles sharpened into blades. Ethan exhaled through his nose, the smallest sigh of surrender to the inevitable. "I'll get the captain," he said at last, voice quiet. He turned, leaving behind an aisle heavy with tension. The passengers shifted again, whispers colliding with the buzz of notifications from dozens of phones. Selina gazed out the window at the wing stretching against the morning sky. She thought of her father again, telling her as a child that dignity isn't given, it's held. And as the silence pressed around her, she realized she was no longer holding it just for herself. She was holding it for everyone who had been asked, time and again, to move when they had the right to stay. Captain Mitchell returned with the kind of presence that usually ended arguments before they began. He stood square in the aisle, hands relaxed at his sides, eyes scanning. Faces the way a pilot reads weather. Around him, the cabin settled into a tense hush. You could hear the click of a buckle, the soft thunk of an overhead bin closing, the bright chime from the galley. Everything else waited. "Good morning," he said. "I am Captain Mitchell. We need to clear the aisle so we can depart on time. I understand there is a seating dispute." Selina Warren met his gaze and inclined her head. She did not stand. The boarding pass lay on the armrest like a small piece of evidence from a case everyone had already solved and no one wanted to rule on. Victoria Hale shifted in the seat beside her, posture sharp, chin tipped slightly upward. "There is no dispute," she announced. "This has been my seat for years. Everyone here knows I sit by the window." Captain Mitchell extended his hand. "Boarding passes, please." Selina handed hers without a word. He glanced down, nodded once, returned it. 3A. He turned to Victoria. She waited half a beat too long, then delivered the slip with a practiced smile. He read it, blinked, checked the seat map on Ethan Clark's tablet, and spoke in that patient tone people use when they hope the right cadence will make bad news sound softer. 3C, he said. A quick murmur rolled through the first 3 rows and drifted back like a breeze. The college student in row 5 typed quickly on his phone. The live stream viewer count ticked upward again, a quiet storm building in the corner of a screen. "That is a mistake," Victoria replied. "It happens. Just let her take the aisle. We will all be happier." Captain Mitchell's eyes flicked to the clock on the bulkhead wall. He was measuring two kinds of time at once. The schedule he owed the airline and the decision he owed the cabin. His jaw worked almost imperceptibly. He breathed in through his nose. In situations like this, he began. We sometimes ask one passenger to move to keep the peace. He said it evenly, allowing nothing personal into the line. And yet the words carried the long shadow of a habit older than any one flight. The habit of smoothing over what should not be smoothed. The habit of asking the person who followed the rules to pay the price for the person who did not. Selina felt the phrase settle across her shoulders like a familiar weight. To keep the peace. She thought of how many offices, counters, checkpoints, and lobby desks had used that reasoning to make her smaller. She remembered a young project manager at a partner firm who had told her quietly after a meeting that she inspired him, then confessed he could not speak up in the room because it would cost him. Peace, he had said, as if it were neutral, as if peace did not have a side. She looked up at the captain. At what point, she asked softly, does keeping the peace turn into rewarding refusal? And what does that teach everyone watching? He held her gaze. Even the aircraft seemed to listen. The low hum of the air system, the faint vibration from the APU, the little rattles that make an airplane a body with a heartbeat. Ethan Clark stood just behind the captain, posture attentive, tablet at his side. He looked from the captain to Selina to Victoria, and for a brief second his face opened. A young man with training and rules and a paycheck. A young man who knew what fairness demanded and what procedures allowed. He swallowed once, small, and waited for the call above his pay grade. Victoria exhaled an impatient breath. You people always drag this into something it is not. It is one seat. This is ridiculous. A hush fell, like a curtain. Isabella Ramirez raised her phone a few inches higher and spoke in a level tone that carried to the last row of first class. It is not one seat, she said. It is the habit of telling the rightful person to move so the louder person can stay. That habit builds a system. And systems are why some passengers walk on planes, expecting the world to rearrange for them. Captain Mitchell did not look at Isabella, but something in his shoulders shifted. He nodded to Ethan. Confirm with the gate. Ethan tapped his tablet, then the armrest screen, then his earpiece. Copy. Gate confirms the assignment. 3A for Ms. Warren. 3C for Ms. Hale. Thank you, the captain said. He faced Victoria again. Ms. Hale, please take your assigned seat so we can push back. Victoria gave him a look that people reserve for waiters they intend to tip poorly. Captain, she said, you and I both know how this usually goes. You ask for cooperation. I cooperate. The airline values loyalty. You take care of your people. That is how this works. The subtext did not bother with disguise. Take care of your people. The cabin heard it. The stream heard it. Comments flared on the student's phone. Viewers typed fast. You are hearing it live. This is the line. This is the moment. Selina felt a prick of heat rise, then recede as she breathed. She remembered her mother tying a scarf before church. The tug, the smoothing of the fabric, the way her mother's hand slowed when she said, "Hold your center. That is where your dignity lives. Do not let anyone pull you off it." She placed her palm flat on the cool leather beside her. Grounded. "My boarding pass says 3A," she said. "I will remain in 3A." Captain Mitchell's mouth compressed. He turned to Ethan. "Go ahead and reseat Ms. Hale." Ethan hesitated. "Captain, the manifest—" "Reseat her," the captain repeated, softer, as if he were not talking to Ethan, but to time itself. We need to leave the gate. From row 4, Isabella's voice came again. Steady. Captain. On the record, are you asking the passenger with the correct assignment to move so the passenger with the incorrect assignment can remain? He did not answer quickly. He looked back at Selina, at Victoria, at the aisle backed up with passengers. He looked down at the boarding pass printer tucked into the bulkhead, at the tiny stack of extra cards and the old pen in the holder. He looked at the door to the cockpit. He looked at the flight time to Los Angeles. He looked at the consequences of 10 seconds one way or the other. His silence filled the cabin like fog. When he finally spoke, it was in that public voice pilots use when they must acknowledge a delay. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, we are going to resolve a seating matter. Thank you for your patience. No apology, no principle. Just a polite layer over a decision that would teach the cabin the wrong lesson. Selina felt something sharpen inside her. Not anger, something cleaner. Resolve. She stood exactly enough to slide deeper into the window, shoulders squared, posture calm. Her voice did not waver. Captain, she said, if the policy here is to ask the rightful passenger to move, then the policy is biased in favor of refusal. That is the opposite of safety. That is the opposite of fairness. The word safety carried a different gravity on an airplane. Heads lifted. Even in coach. Someone said, that. Victoria laughed. A dry click. You are making a spectacle of yourself. Take the aisle. No, Selina said. The single syllable threaded through the cabin. It did not shout. It drew a line. Ethan took a small breath that sounded like relief. He looked to the captain and did not lower his eyes. Captain Mitchell shifted his weight. Ms. Hale, he said, please move to 3C. No, Victoria said. Make her move. By the galley. A chime pinged. A gate agent's voice crackled through Ethan's earpiece. The student's phone flashed with comments flying so fast they blurred. Selina's phone vibrated in her blazer. A single notification, encrypted. The subject line was a word that meant nothing to anyone else and everything to her. She did not look yet. She let the presence of it rest like a steadying hand at her back. She looked at the captain one more time. The choice is yours, she said gently, but the record will show what you choose. He stared at her, at the quiet steadiness in her eyes, and then, just for a moment, at his own reflection in the window. The wing extended into the morning light, unmoved by the small storm inside. He opened his mouth as if to speak a compromise that would disappoint everyone equally. Before he could, a voice called from the jet bridge and cut clean through the suspended air. Captain, hold. Gate request. Do not close the door. The cabin exhaled as one. Phones lifted again. The moment had not ended. It had only tightened. Captain Mitchell's eyes flicked to the door, to Ethan, to Selina. The pressure from the cockpit had reached its limit. A different kind of pressure was about to arrive. The gate agent's call hung in the air like the first drop before a storm. Do not close the door. Captain, hold. The jet bridge rattled as if the plane itself were reconsidering what it meant to leave. Isabella Ramirez rose halfway from row 4, steadying her phone with both hands. Her voice was calm, shaped by years of on-the-record questions. Captain, she said, for clarity, I am recording. We are observing a situation where the passenger assigned to 3A is being encouraged to move, so a higher status passenger can take her place. Can you confirm whether this is Sky Nova policy? Captain Mitchell did not look at her. He watched the forward galley where a gate supervisor in a navy blazer and headset hurried aboard with the quick, coiled steps of someone trained to fix things without admitting they were broken. Behind the supervisor, a ground agent balanced a handheld printer and a neat stack of fresh boarding cards. The supervisor nodded at the captain. "We need a quick resolution," he said in a low voice. "We are at risk of missing our slot." "Captain," Isabella said, "still level, still recording. Is on time more important than equal treatment?" A ripple of breath moved across the cabin. The college student stream spiked into the tens of thousands. Incoming comments scrolled like a river in flood. "You are watching this live. Do not look away. Respect the boarding pass. Hold your seat. Queen, say her name. Selena Warren." Victoria Hale crossed her arms, the smile gone now. "This is ridiculous," she said. "It is a window seat. I sit there. That is how it has always been." That sentence stopped Isabella as surely as a hand on her shoulder. That is how it has always been. She kept the phone steady and let silence do part of the work. Then she said softly, "That sentence is the reason I am recording." Ethan Clark stood just behind the supervisor, tablet glowing. He looked like a man standing between two winds. His training told him to make it smooth. His conscience told him smooth had a cost. "Ms. Hale," he said carefully, "the gate confirms 3C is your assignment today. Ms. Warren is 3A. We need you to take your assigned seat so we can depart." Victoria did not move. She tipped her chin toward Selena as though indicating someone who should apologize. "I am not moving from this window," she said. "If you want peace, make her move." The supervisor switched to the thin smile of corporate hospitality. "Ms. Warren, may we ask you to accommodate this situation? We can offer a voucher. We can offer a bottle of champagne. We can make you comfortable in 3C. Isabella did not lower her camera. She watched Selena's face for the micro-expressions that tell a fuller story than any soundbite. The small inhale, the quiet exhale, the way Selena's gaze shifted to the window and then back to the supervisor, as if noting that the wing had stayed exactly where it belonged. "No," Selena said. "My boarding pass says 3A. I will remain in 3A. Her voice did not rise. It landed. Isabella felt something like a click inside her chest, the click she knew as the beginning of truth. She had chased it in city council chambers, in hospital hallways after bad policy caused worse outcomes, in school board meetings where a single vote turned into a life story for thousands of kids. The click meant she was watching The Hinge, the moment people would replay when they tried to understand how a thing had shifted from hidden to visible. She stepped into the aisle just enough that her voice would carry without disrupting the boarding path. "For the record," she said, "what we are seeing is not a misunderstanding. It is a pattern. In that pattern, the person who follows the rules is routinely asked to pay for the comfort of the person who refuses. In that pattern, loyalty status becomes a permission slip to bend the world. And in that pattern, bias is laundered through the language of keeping the peace." A woman in row 2 nodded slowly, tears glittering, caught off guard by her own reaction. A man in row 6 whispered to his partner, "I have seen this at work. I have been the one who was asked to move." The supervisor glanced toward the captain again. Time pressure hardened his voice. "We are not adjudicating social issues here. We are trying to leave the gate," Isabella answered before Selena could. "With respect," she said, "you are adjudicating social issues every time you decide whose comfort counts." The plane moaned softly as if testing its own patience. Outside, a tug idled, waiting. A ramp crewman checked his watch, then the headset lead, then the airplane door, Inside, the cabin's collective attention narrowed to a point. Captain Mitchell tried to retake control with professional cadence. "Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your patience. We will be underway shortly." Isabella did not sit. "Captain," she said, "I am asking you, not as a journalist but as a passenger. Will you ask the rightful passenger to move? Yes or no?" He opened his mouth, but his earpiece crackled first. "Hold for operations," a voice said. Then a different channel. "Captain, this is dispatch. Stand by for instruction." Isabella caught the change in his face, the tiny turn of the eye that says a new voice has entered the room. Selena's phone buzzed against her rib again. A second encrypted notification. She let it vibrate and then still. She kept her eyes on the captain, on the small war across his features between habit and horizon. Ethan took a step toward Isabella and lowered his voice. "Ma'am, please, for safety, remain seated while we resolve this." She met his gaze and nodded once, acknowledging the ask. Then she spoke louder. "For the cabin and the camera. I will sit, I will keep recording, and I will keep naming what I see, because naming is how we end the part where everyone says it was a misunderstanding." She sat. The phone stayed up. Victoria smirked. "Get over yourself," she muttered. "You people and your performative outrage." The word struck, cheap and practiced. Selena refused to give them a stage. She thought instead of a night long ago in Chicago, when her mother worked a double in an ER and came home with a story about a patient who kept calling her girl. Her mother had said, "I am not here for his respect. I am here for his health." But she had also said, "Every time I refuse to answer to girl, another young nurse will have a better night." Isabella's stream exploded with comments. Someone typed, "My mom is a nurse. This is real." Another wrote, "I lost a promotion like this. Polite bias. Death by 1,000 courtesies." Another, say her name again, "Selena Warren." The supervisor straightened as his tablet lit. He glanced at the captain. "We have a directive from operations," he said. The cabin held its breath. "The directive is to return to gate authority if necessary." The supervisor read. The wording was careful, like stepping stones across a creek. "To ensure safety and compliance with assignment, flight crew is authorized to reseat according to manifest or return to gate if refusal continues." That language did not declare a winner, but it moved the frame. It made refusal the problem rather than firmness. Captain Mitchell looked at Selena, then at Victoria, then at the whole cabin, as if to ask whether they would accept the lesson the airline was about to teach them. He nodded once. "Ms. Hale," he said, "please take 3C. If you refuse, we will return to the gate." A flash of color rose high in Victoria's cheeks. Her mouth rounded into the shape of a threat. "You do not want to do that," she said. "I know people. I am close to your VP of Customer Experience. He calls me by name." Isabella whispered just loud enough. "That is the point." Ethan took a half step toward Victoria, the way you approach a skittish dog with an open palm. "Ms. Hale, please." Victoria leaned back, jaw set. "Make me," she said. The supervisor lifted his hand to his headset. He spoke quietly into the mic. "Ops, passenger refuses receipt. Recommend return to gate." Selena felt her pulse thrum once and settle. She stared at the wing. It did not tremble. She glanced at her phone. The encrypted notification still waited. A small lighthouse. Isabella lifted her phone a degree higher. In that slight movement was a prayer she had never admitted into words. Let the record be clear. Let the record protect the next person. Then the crackle came again in the captain's earpiece. Different voice. Different authority. Captain, this is corporate operations. You are authorized to return to gate. You will receive further instruction on arrival. He looked at Selina. In his eyes, something like recognition dawned, though he could not yet name it. Ladies and gentlemen, he said into the PA, we have received instruction to return to the gate to resolve a seating matter. Please remain seated with your seat belts fastened. A low chorus of reactions rolled through the cabin, some relieved, some stunned, a few annoyed, most watching the woman at the window who had refused to be moved. Isabella put her phone down for a breath and looked at Selina. She spoke quietly, so it would not carry on the stream. Thank you, she said, for holding your seat. Selina turned her head and met those steady reporter eyes. Thank you, she said, for holding the record. The plane eased back toward the jet bridge. The tug's coupler clicked onto the nose gear. Outside, an agent gave the signal. Inside, history inched in reverse so it could move forward. Isabella's phone vibrated with a text from her editor. If it is what it looks like, the editor wrote, we will run a piece within the hour. Send names if you can. Send quotes. Send the moment it turned. Isabella typed back with her thumb. The moment it turned was when someone said no and meant it. She hit send. Then she lifted the phone again and resumed the quiet work of witnessing. The aircraft rolled slowly back to the gate, its wheels groaning as if reluctant to return. Inside, the cabin was no longer just a cabin. It had become a stage. Dozens of phones pointed toward row 3, their screens glowing like watchful eyes. The hum of engines was joined by the rhythm of typing thumbs, each comment a spark in a widening fire. On the college student stream, the viewer count leapt past 50,000, then 100, hashtags sprouted like wildfire. Seat for respect, Sky Nova Truth. Selina Warren. Comments flew faster than the eye could follow. She's the real deal. This is history happening. Don't blink. Victoria Hale clutched her designer tote tighter, jaw clenched. She hissed under her breath, do you people have nothing better to do than record me? You'll regret this when it all blows over. But it wasn't blowing over. It was building. Isabella Ramirez angled her phone slightly, catching the captain, the supervisor, and Selina in one frame. She whispered into the mic of her earbuds. For those joining, here's what you missed. A black woman with a boarding pass for 3A was told to move so a frequent flyer could keep the seat. She refused. The airline is returning to the gate under corporate instruction. This isn't just a misunderstanding. It's systemic. The live stream erupted. Civil rights on a plane. History repeating itself. Say her name, Selina Warren. Selina sat composed, hands folded lightly in her lap. She could feel the storm swirling, but chose stillness as her armor. Inside, though, her thoughts swirled with more weight than she let anyone see. She remembered a board meeting last year when an investor dismissed her projections until a junior analyst repeated them. She remembered the ache of silence afterward, the way she had smiled anyway. And now, on this plane, she thought enough. Not again. Not here. Captain Mitchell's voice crackled through the PA. Ladies and gentlemen, for those concerned, we will resolve the matter quickly at the gate. Thank you for your patience. The words did nothing to calm the mood. If anything, they sharpened it. Phones stayed high. Passengers whispered. A mother in row 7 whispered to her teenage son, watch carefully. This is how dignity looks. Victoria suddenly snapped, loud enough for all to hear. "This is absurd. Do you even know who I am? I've flown this airline for 12 years. They know me by name." Selina turned her head, eyes steady. "Not yet," she said softly. "But they will know me." The cabin gasped. Phones caught the line. Captions appeared instantly. "Not yet, but they will know me." The phrase raced across social feeds like a lit fuse. Isabella's phone buzzed in her palm. Her editor again. "Clip that line. That's the headline." The gate came into view through the oval window. Ground crew waved their wands, guiding the plane home as if it were a wounded bird. Inside, tension swelled. Victoria tapped furiously on her phone, sending messages that came back unanswered. She was trending now, but not the way she wanted. The college student shouted softly to no one in particular. "It just passed 200,000 viewers. This is everywhere." Selina's phone buzzed again, the encrypted thread lighting up with updates from her team. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. She already knew what it meant. Her stand in 3A was no longer private. It was public. And with that came consequence. As the jet bridge connected with a heavy thud, the supervisor's headset crackled. "Corporate is on the line. They want this resolved in front of witnesses." Selina exhaled, slow and calm, and thought of her father's words. "Dignity isn't noise. It's weight. Hold it steady, and the world has to feel it." The door opened. Cameras tilted. The real confrontation was about to begin. The jet bridge clanged into place, and the cabin lights seemed brighter, harsher. Conversations hushed into a low current of anticipation. Everyone sensed that the moment had stretched beyond a seating dispute. Something larger was unfolding, and they were inside it. Two corporate representatives stepped on board, one in a navy suit with a Sky Nova badge clipped neatly, the other carrying a slim laptop bag. Their expressions were tight, professional, but their eyes darted quickly around the cabin, measuring the storm they were walking into. The suited man spoke first. "Good morning. I'm Richard Lane, VP of Passenger Relations. We've received reports of a dispute in this cabin. We'd like to resolve this matter swiftly and respectfully." Phones tilted upward instantly. The air turned electric. Victoria Hale leaned forward, relief flooding her voice. "Finally, someone who understands. I've been humiliated by this nonsense. I always sit in this seat. 12 years, platinum status. Tell her to move so we can leave already." Murmurs rose. The college student muttered under his breath, "She's doubling down. His stream count soared past 300,000. Richard Lane's gaze shifted to Selina Warren. He offered a polite smile. "Ms." Selina held his eyes, calm as stone. "Warren. Selina Warren. My boarding pass says 3A." The second representative opened the laptop, tapping swiftly. He frowned, then turned the screen to Richard. "Confirmed," he said. "Passenger Warren. Seat 3A. Passenger Hale. Seat 3C." The evidence was undeniable. Yet Richard hesitated. He cleared his throat. "In some cases, to preserve schedule and maintain passenger harmony, we ask for flexibility." Selina's voice sliced through his sentence. "Harmony is not created by rewarding refusal. Harmony is created by respecting rules equally." The cabin buzzed. Someone clapped once. Sharp. A man in row 6 muttered, "That's it. That's the truth." Victoria scoffed. "This is absurd. Do you people even know who she is? She's just—" Her words stopped cold when Selina reached into her blazer. She drew out her phone, tapped once, and held the screen for Richard to see. Encrypted credentials bloomed across it. Corporate-level clearance codes glowing blue. Richard's face drained of color. His colleague's fingers froze on the keyboard. Passengers leaned in, whispers racing down the rows. "What's happening? What's that?" Selena's voice was even, measured, but each word struck like a gavel. "I am not just a passenger. I am the chairwoman and majority shareholder of Skynova Airways. The airline you work for answers to me." The silence that followed was thunderous. Gasps, phones capturing every angle, hearts pounding with the realization. The students' live stream erupted, comments pouring like an avalanche. "She owns the airline. This is bigger than I thought. Respect is not optional." Victoria blinked, confusion clouding her arrogance. "Wait. Your Selena didn't flinch. That's the problem. Ms. Hale, you didn't need to know who I was. You only needed to respect the boarding pass in my hand." The line hit like lightning. Passengers erupted in applause, hesitant at first, then building, hands striking together with the urgency of truth revealed. Phones shook as they caught the sound, the faces, the moment. Richard Lane stumbled over his words. "Madam Chairwoman, I had no idea." Selena raised her hand slightly. "Stop. You don't need to assure me. You need to assure every passenger here that fairness will never again be optional." Applause swelled louder. Isabella Ramirez, still streaming, whispered into her mic, "This is the moment. The truth and power. Revealed." Victoria's face blanched. She clutched her tote like a lifeline, eyes wide as if the ground had given way beneath her. And Selena Warren, seated in 3A where she belonged, simply turned her gaze back to the window. The wings stretched steady into the morning sun, and for the first time since boarding, she allowed herself the smallest breath of relief. Applause still lingered in the air like aftershocks from an earthquake when the corporate representatives realized what had just unfolded. Richard Lane's hands twitched against his laptop bag, his polished voice suddenly fragile. "Madam Chairwoman," he stammered, "we sincerely apologize." Selena Warren's gaze was steady, her words cutting with precision. "Apologies are empty if they're only for me. What matters is what every passenger here takes home from this flight. Do they leave believing the rules protect them equally, or that the rules bend for entitlement?" Phones stayed high, capturing every syllable. Hashtags surged again. Respect in Selena Warren. Power and dignity. Victoria Hale's face had drained of confidence. She tried one last gambit, her voice brittle. "You're overreacting. This isn't a civil rights matter. It's one seat on one plane." Isabella Ramirez's voice rose from row 4, crisp and amplified through her stream. "That's the mistake. Ms. Hale. Bias never hides in the big things. It hides in the small things repeated 1,000 times." The cabin stirred with quiet affirmations. A mother whispered, "That's the truth." A businessman muttered, "I've seen this play out in boardrooms." Selena felt the moment shift again. Her pulse was calm, but inside she weighed the cost of silence against the burden of speaking. She chose the latter. "This is bigger than a seat," she said. "This is about the reflex to strip dignity from some and grant entitlement to others. And if that reflex lives here, on my airline, then my responsibility is to root it out." Richard Lane's phone buzzed violently. He glanced down, face paling. "Madam Chairwoman, Corporate Command has convened emergency review. The board is watching the stream in real time." A ripple ran through the passengers. The board is watching. Suddenly, the drama inside a cabin had become a boardroom crisis. Ethan Clark, the flight attendant, swallowed hard. His training had never covered this. He stood straighter, though, as if realizing fairness was no longer optional. Victoria snapped again, desperate. You'll ruin this airline with your crusade. Important people won't side with you." Selena's reply was a whisper that carried like thunder. "It isn't me this attention is ruining." Gas. A few passengers clapped again. Louder now. No hesitation. Isabella's stream exploded, her chat feed flooded with fire emojis, hashtags, donations, demands for interviews. The college student's phone buzzed nonstop. "You're trending worldwide." Outside the aircraft, the tug disconnected. The jet bridge remained locked. Ground crew whispered into radios, sensing the weight of the event unfolding inside. Richard Lane adjusted his tie, desperate to regain control. "Madam Chairwoman, if you'd prefer, we can deplane quietly and address this privately." Selena shook her head, calm but immovable. "No, the problem did not happen in private. The correction will not happen in private either." The cabin erupted with cheers. Passengers clapped. Some stood. Others raised their phones higher. For once, fairness was not being hushed behind closed doors. It was declared out loud. Victoria sank lower into her seat, face hidden behind her hands. Her phone buzzed wildly, with texts she refused to read. Selena turned back toward the window, the sun casting a clean light across her blazer. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. "When you refuse to be moved, you give others permission to stand too." And for the first time, she felt the weight of hundreds of strangers drawing strength from her refusal. The door swung open, and the jet bridge filled the entrance like a drawn breath. A pair of airport security officers stepped aboard with measured calm, their uniforms crisp, their eyes steady. Behind them came a customer service manager from the terminal and a corporate communications aide with a tablet hugged tight to her chest. The aisle rustled as passengers shifted to see. Richard Lane spoke first, his voice pitched low for diplomacy and high for control. "Thank you for your patience. Everyone, we will resolve this quickly and resume the flight. Officers, please stand by while we complete a receipt according to the manifest." One of the officers nodded. Hands visible, posture relaxed but unambiguous. "We are here to assist with compliance and safety, sir." The words safety and compliance landed with a palpable weight. In row 3, Victoria Hale sat rigid, lips pressed to a thin line. Her fingers dug into the leather handles of her tote as if she could hold her place by force of grip alone. She lifted her chin and addressed the officers like people she had dismissed 100 times in lobby foyers. "This is all a misunderstanding. I have sat in that window seat for years. I have status. They know my name." The officer nearest her kept his voice calm. "Ma'am, your seat assignment today is 3C. We need you to move now." Victoria's eyes flitted from the officer to Richard Lane to Captain Mitchell, searching for someone to rescue the story she had always believed about herself. Her gaze snagged on Selena Warren, who looked out the window as if the wing itself offered steadiness. Victoria's voice shook. "This will ruin me," she whispered to no one and to everyone. Selena turned, meeting her eyes without triumph and without apology. "The rules do not ruin people," she said quietly. "Refusal does." Isabella Ramirez caught the line and repeated it softly into her mic. The chat on her stream erupted. Comments flooded like a tide. "The rules do not ruin people. Refusal does." Someone clipped it and posted within seconds. It began to spread. The customer service manager stepped closer with a professional smile that was more shield than expression. "Ms. Hale, we are moving now. The flight is delayed. Please take your assigned seat. If you refuse, you will be removed." The ultimatum hung there with the clarity of a bell. The cabin hushed to hear the strike. Victoria did not move. The officer's voice tightened, still courteous, no longer patient. "Ma'am, this is your final instruction. Please stand and take 3C for a heartbeat." It seemed she might fight. Then, like a person waking from a dream that had already evaporated, she stood. The passengers watched in a silence that felt like a moral verdict. Isabella filmed without commentary. The college student lowered his cap, then raised it again as if acknowledging the gravity of recording a public ending. Victoria shuffled one step. The officer gestured toward 3C. She stopped, turned back toward Selina with a flash of something raw. "You cost me everything," she said. Selina shook her head. "No. Your choices did." Victoria sat. The seatbelt clicked. The sound was small and absolute. Captain Mitchell exhaled into the PA, the practiced cadence returning to his voice as he addressed the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We will now finalize our departure. Flight attendants, prepare the cabin." Ethan Clark straightened. The change in his posture was subtle and profound. He moved with the clarity of a man who knew the policy he would defend when asked later what happened. He checked overhead bins, secured galleys, and nodded to passengers with a sincerity that had been missing earlier. When he reached row 3, he paused. "Ms. Warren, can I offer you anything? Water? Tea?" Selina gave him a small, genuine smile. "Water would be nice. Thank you, Mr. Clark." He returned a minute later with a glass and a napkin folded carefully, not as a flourish, but as a promise that service, properly understood, is respect made visible. In row 4, Isabella's phone buzzed nonstop with messages from producers and editors. She skimmed one from a morning show booker. "Are you airborne yet? We want you live at landing." Another from her editor. "We will run the first piece now. Title options incoming." She typed back between breaths. "Use the quote. The rules do not ruin people. Refusal does." Richard Lane retreated to the galley to field a call from corporate communications. He spoke in low, clipped sentences. "Yes." She revealed herself. "Yes." Chairwoman Warren. "Yes." On multiple streams. "Yes." We are preparing a statement." He listened, nodded, wiped a hand across his mouth, and straightened his tie before returning to the cabin. His eyes met Selina's. He looked like a man who had aged 5 years and 15 minutes. "Madam Chairwoman," he said, "the board requests a brief statement for internal circulation and customer assurance. One sentence would do." Selina considered. She looked around at the faces, at the phones, at the small theater of a plane, where humanity is forced to sit close and decide what it will be to each other. She thought of 1,000 small moments that had led to this one. She thought of the cost other people had paid to say no when it would have been easier to move. She nodded. "Tell them this. We do not trade fairness for speed. We do not reward refusal. We fly with respect because safety depends on it." Richard typed as she spoke, eyes flicking up to memorize the tone, as well as the words. The aircraft pulled away from the gate again. Outside, ground crew cleared signals. Inside, the cabin exhaled as if it had been holding a collective breath for an hour. Seat belts tightened. Bags were nudged further under seats. The student stream counter spiked again as a news anchor's voice began to quote the lines already circulating across platforms. At 30,000 feet, a soft chime would sound and service would begin. But for now, as the plane inched toward the runway, the immediate consequences were still unfolding in the world beyond the oval windows. A financial news alert pinged on the device of the man in row 1. He blinked, then read aloud in surprise. Sky Nova stock dipping on viral confrontation. Recovery expected after statement. 2 rows back. A woman reading a business blog whispered to her seatmate. 3 airlines issued statements within 10 minutes. They are pledging policy reviews. She shook her head, amazed and a little disbelieving. Over 1 seat. Isabella caught that and murmured into her mic. Not over 1 seat. Over 1 pattern. Ethan returned to check on passengers. When he reached 3C, he crouched slightly to meet Victoria's eyes without hovering. Ms. Hale, if you need anything, let me know. She stared at the wall, face stone white. He did not press. He stood, adjusted the curtain, and moved on. Training had taught him to pour champagne with a steady hand. This day had taught him a steadier definition of service. Richard Lane's tablet vibrated again. He glanced, then looked at Selina. The CEO and board chair request a call after landing, he said. They also approved a public commitment. Mandatory anti-bias training for all customer-facing staff. Anonymous reporting that actually triggers review. Clear rule that seat assignments are non-negotiable regardless of status. Selina's eyes softened, though her posture remained straight. Good. Make sure this is not just a press line. Make sure there is money and measurement behind every sentence. We will, he said. He sounded tired. He also sounded like he believed it. The plane paused short of the runway. The engines hummed deeper, then settled. Captain Mitchell came on the PA again, tone newly grounded. Folks, thanks for your patience. We have been cleared for departure. Flight time to Los Angeles is 5 hours and 15 minutes. We will do everything we can to make your trip steady and safe. The words steady and safe rang differently now. The cabin heard them as more than weather and wings. They heard them as a promise about how people would be treated at 30,000 feet. Selina rested her head back against the seat and closed her eyes for 1 quiet second. She felt a small fatigue seep in, the kind that arrives after a long holding of the line. She let the weight pass through and out. When she opened her eyes, the wing was still there, steady as a thought that refuses to be erased. Isabella typed a final line to her editor before takeoff mode. The story is not who she is. She wrote, the story is what everyone learned when she did not move. The plane began its roll. The cabin trembled. Hands gripped armrests. Celine breathed in a long, even breath and felt the lift that comes when gravity gives way to forward motion. Above the runway, the city fell beneath them, and the immediate consequences became the first draft of a new standard. By the time Sky Nova Flight 227 leveled off above 30,000 feet, the storm outside the fuselage was already global. While the cabin settled into the low hum of engines, news networks had seized on the clips that passengers streamed only minutes before. Headlines scrolled across tickers in New York, London, and Hong Kong. Black CEO refuses to move, shakes airline industry. Inside the plane, the atmosphere was taut but strangely reverent. People whispered not about the meal service or turbulence, but about what they had just witnessed. A woman in row 5 texted her sister, "I was here. She didn't move. You should have seen it." A man in row 7 drafted a LinkedIn post already titled "Leadership at 30,000 feet." Selina Warren sat quietly, sipping the glass of water Ethan Clark had placed with deliberate care. She had not sought the cameras or the streams, yet she knew instinctively that the weight of this moment would reach beyond her. She gazed out the oval window, letting the steady expanse of clouds calm the adrenaline that still edged her heartbeat. In the galley, Ethan leaned against the counter, his hands pressed flat against stainless steel. He had replayed the sequence in his mind a dozen times already. Training said to de-escalate, to prioritize departure time. But fairness had demanded something else. For the first time in years, he questioned which standard should define his work. Back at SkyNova headquarters, the fallout unfolded at dizzying speed. Screens in the crisis room lit with simultaneous feeds. Isabella Ramirez livestream replaying on 3 networks, trending hashtags burning across Twitter, stock prices wobbling on financial tickers. A communications director muttered, "We've lost control of the narrative." The CEO shot back, "We never had control. The truth was streaming before we wrote our first line." Civil rights groups issued statements within an hour, proof that bias doesn't hide in the back row. It sits in first class. Lawmakers tweeted demands for hearings. Rival airlines scrambled to distance themselves, promising reviews of their own boarding policies. On board, Isabella Ramirez lowered her phone for the first time in over an hour. She scrolled through her notifications, interview requests, producer messages, strangers thanking her for naming what they saw. She opened her notes app and began drafting her first column. The rules do not ruin people. Refusal does. Victoria Hale shrank into 3C. Face turned toward the wall. Phone buzzing endlessly with messages she refused to open. Her empire of social clout and platinum status had evaporated in a single morning. Every vibration in her purse felt like another thread unraveling. She pressed her palms to her eyes, muttering, "This can't be happening." But it was, and it had been captured from every angle. Selena closed her eyes briefly, leaning into the stillness she carried like armor. Inside, the echoes of her father's words returned. Dignity isn't optional. It's the weight that keeps you upright when the world tries to tilt you. She hadn't planned to reveal herself, but the choice had been forced. And now, the consequences rippled far beyond her seat. When the captain made his next announcement smooth, calm, professional passengers listened with new ears. "Safety," he said, "depends on respect for rules." And every passenger felt the double meaning. The industry itself was trembling. A single refusal to move had forced boardrooms, regulators, and millions of passengers to confront an old truth with fresh urgency. What happened in 3A wasn't just a disruption, it was a reckoning. When the wheels of SkyNova Flight 227 finally kissed the runway at JFK, the cabin broke into a round of applause that carried more weight than relief at a safe landing. It was an applause of recognition, gratitude, and something deeper, the sense that they had been part of a moment history would not forget. Selena Warren stood slowly, her blazer still sharp, her expression composed. She gathered her bag, not with haste, but with deliberate grace, as though reclaiming every second of dignity that others had tried to strip away. Passengers rose in quiet respect, some stepping aside as if creating an aisle of honor. Victoria Hale remained in 3C, her face pale and phone still buzzing with unread notifications. She barely moved, whispering fragments to herself, fragments no one cared to catch. The weight of consequence had already settled. Her world was no longer her own. It belonged to the glare of headlines and the judgment of millions who had seen her arrogance exposed. Ethan Clark lingered near the galley, his chest heavy with the knowledge that his silence at first had nearly compounded the harm. Yet he also knew this flight had redrawn his compass. He resolved that his duty wasn't just to safety and service, but to fairness. When he locked eyes with Selena as she disembarked, he offered a nod that said, "Thank you for reminding me who I need to be." Captain Mitchell, silver hair catching the late afternoon light, stood at the cockpit door. For the first time in years, he felt humbled rather than in command. He extended his hand to Selina. "I should have acted sooner," he admitted. Selina's reply was quiet, but it carried through the cabin. "Then act sooner next time for anyone, not just me." Outside, camera flashes erupted as the jet bridge opened. Isabella Ramirez walked just behind Selina, phone still recording, narrating in real time. She didn't just hold her seat. She held a mirror up to an industry, and we all saw ourselves in it. Her words would become the headline for her front-page feature. By evening, news networks replayed the footage in loops. Hashtags dominated social media, and seat for respect. Me call Selina Warren. Me 3 reckoning. Civil rights leaders hailed the moment as a turning point, not because it revealed something new, but because it refused to let the old remain hidden. At Sky Nova headquarters, board members convened under emergency protocol. Richard Lane sat stiff in his chair as the chairwoman's words echoed from a replay on the central screen. "If that reflex lives here, on my airline, then my responsibility is to root it out." The board had no choice but to endorse sweeping reforms, mandatory equity training, anonymous reporting channels, disciplinary measures tied to bias complaints, and independent oversight committees. Passengers from the flight were interviewed, their testimonies weaving a chorus of affirmation. "She gave me courage to speak up next time," one woman said. "She showed me that silence costs dignity." A man added, "For once, the lesson didn't belong only to the victim. It belonged to everyone who had watched." In the days that followed, Victoria Hale's professional and social circles collapsed. Brands cut ties. Her speaking engagements evaporated. She became a cautionary tale, overnight entitlement undone by its own arrogance. Yet even her fall carried a bitter truth that the system had often rewarded her behavior until this one moment made it undeniable. Selina, meanwhile, chose silence after the flight. She declined interviews, offering only a written statement. Respect is not optional. Dignity is not negotiable. What happened in 3A belongs to every traveler who has been dismissed. My stand was not for me alone, but for all of us. The word spread far and wide, quoted in classrooms, workplaces, and living rooms. Parents showed their children the clip, telling them this is what it looks like to stand without shouting. This is what it means to hold your ground. Weeks later, at a national aviation conference, Selina walked onto the stage to deliver a keynote. She looked across the hall of executives, pilots, and lawmakers, her voice calm yet commanding. Change does not arrive with noise. It begins when someone refuses to be moved. The question is, will you wait to be forced, or will you choose it now? The applause that followed was thunderous, not the applause of a landing, but of an industry shaken into reckoning. And as Selina left the stage, the words of her father once again filled her heart. Power is not control. Power is the courage to give others the strength to stand. 2. The legacy of Seat 3A was no longer hers alone. It belonged to everyone who had ever been told, "You don't belong here," and who now carried the certainty that dignity cannot be negotiated. The story of Selina Warren reminds us that dignity is not a luxury, it is a birthright. Too often, we encounter moments where silence feels safer, where avoiding conflict seems easier. But silence can allow injustice to take root, whether in a cabin seat, a workplace meeting, or a family decision. Selina's strength shows us that calm resistance can be more powerful than loud retaliation. For older audiences, this lesson carries a special weight. Many have lived through decades of change, fought battles for fairness, or quietly borne the sting of bias. This story is not only about an airline, It is about life's daily choices to stand for fairness, even in small things, because small moments shape the culture we pass to the next generation. Selena's refusal was not about anger. It was about responsibility. She reminded us that justice begins in the ordinary, that respect must be demanded with clarity, and that power means little unless it is used to protect others. The takeaway is simple yet profound when dignity is tested. Our choices ripple far beyond ourselves. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Stories like these remind us how deeply respect and courage matter in our everyday lives. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Together, we can keep telling the truths that inspire change and give hope.